Anglosphere Report Breaking analysis. For nearly 40 years, New Zealand has balanced two priorities: protecting its independence and strengthening its security. This week, that balance may have begun to change. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon says New Zealand is considering joining Australia's new Ocean of Peace alliance. If Cabinet approves, it could become one of New Zealand's most significant strategic decisions since adopting its nuclear-free policy. Here's what happened. On Monday, July 6th in Suva, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Fijian Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka signed the Ocean of Peace Alliance, described by Australian ministers as a mutual defence treaty. According to the New Zealand government's own official statement, published on beehive.gov.nz, the alliance commits its parties to cooperate and consult and to act to meet common danger. It is Fiji's first alliance of any kind. It is Australia's fourth formal ally, after the United States, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea. Taken together, the agreement signals that Pacific security is becoming more structured, more formal, and more strategically contested than at any time in recent decades. It is backed by $1 billion Australian dollars over the next decade. Crucially, the treaty leaves the door open for other Pacific states to join, provided Australia and Fiji both agree. On Thursday, July 9th, Prime Minister Luxon confirmed New Zealand would now discuss its interest in exploring membership with Canberra and Suva. Any final decision, his government said, will be made by Cabinet, followed by the usual parliamentary treaty process. Luxon's own words, New Zealand and Australia share a close bond with a military alliance that continues to go from strength to strength, and we also have a strong and enduring relationship with Fiji. We already work with both countries on how we can develop a safer region for all, so engaging with them on this alliance is logical. Why now? New Zealand's Defence Minister, Chris Penk, confirmed he had already spoken with both the Australian and Fijian Prime Ministers about the agreement. Luxon set out the strategic logic directly. New Zealand being in early would be a good thing, because also you would have an ability to ultimately determine which other countries could join from across the Pacific. The signing took place not long before China conducted a ballistic missile test in the South Pacific. A launch some analysts have interpreted as intentionally timed, though a test of this technical complexity requires months of preparation, and the timing has not been confirmed as a direct response to the treaty. Whether connected or not, the two developments happened within days of each other, and together they have intensified debate about the Pacific's future security environment. New Zealand's Foreign Minister Winston Peters said at the time that launching ballistic missiles into the South Pacific was at odds with the spirit and intent of the Blue Pacific Ocean of Peace. Fiji's own foreign policy has shifted markedly over 2 decades, from a period of closer alignment with China following a 2006 coup, to Prime Minister Rabuka's return to office in 2022, and a documented warming of ties with traditional partners since. Why does this matter for New Zealand specifically? Law professor Al Gillespie, commenting publicly on the decision, said it would be very significant if New Zealand joined, because currently the country's only clear military obligation of this kind is with Australia. He noted the alliance is modeled on NATO's structure, though its obligations are weaker. If a member is attacked, the treaty says others will act to meet the common danger in accordance with its domestic practices, language that gives each nation flexibility rather than an automatic commitment. The question facing New Zealand is no longer whether the Pacific is changing. It is how New Zealand should respond to that change. Why does Australia want New Zealand in? From Canberra's perspective, New Zealand is not just another potential partner. It is Australia's closest defence ally in the South Pacific. Bringing Wellington into the agreement would strengthen the credibility of the alliance and present a more unified regional posture. Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong put it plainly, "We welcome the New Zealand government's interest in joining the Ocean of Peace alliance with Australia and Fiji once it enters into force." She called it a good step forward. For Canberra, adding its closest security partner strengthens a Pacific architecture it has been building since 2022. Following a security pact between China and the Solomon Islands that alarmed Australian planners. Every security agreement creates a strategic calculation for someone else, in this case, China. Its foreign ministry has previously characterized similar Australian-led Pacific agreements as attempts to constrain its regional influence. This report notes, no direct, on-the-record Chinese government statement responding specifically to New Zealand's potential membership has been confirmed as of this report. For Five Eyes, this tests whether New Zealand's long-standing preference for independent foreign policy can coexist with a more visibly contested Pacific security environment. What happens next? Confirmed. Wellington will discuss membership interest with Canberra and Suva. No timeline has been set. Confirmed. Any final decision requires cabinet approval, followed by New Zealand's standard parliamentary treaty process. Reported, not yet resolved, domestic political reaction. New Zealand commentary has noted that opposition parties, Labour, the Greens, and Te Pāti Māori, have historically been cautious about arrangements that could be seen as drawing New Zealand into great power competition. And this is expected to be tested in the run-up to an election year. The skeptics' challenge. Has the security threat been overstated? Fiji's own defense capacity remains modest. Some analysts would argue the alliance's value lies in diplomatic alignment and shared intelligence posture, not added combat capability. Would joining strengthen or reduce New Zealand's strategic independence? Luxon frames early membership as preserving New Zealand's influence over who else may join. Critics could equally argue that formal mutual defense commitments, however flexible in wording, narrow New Zealand's room to maneuver compared with remaining outside the treaty. Could this increase regional tension rather than reduce it? That is a live and unresolved question. One this report cannot answer in advance of evidence. What would change this assessment? A confirmed, specific Chinese diplomatic response, naming New Zealand's potential membership, would sharply raise the stakes. So would any indication cabinet has moved beyond exploring interest toward a firm commitment? What we know, the treaty is signed, its provisions are public, and New Zealand has confirmed its interest in exploring membership. What we don't know, whether cabinet will ultimately approve it, on what timeline, and how China will formally respond. Whether New Zealand ultimately joins this alliance or remains outside it, one reality is becoming increasingly clear. The Pacific is no longer simply a region of diplomacy. It is becoming one of the world's most important strategic theaters. How Wellington responds may shape its security policy for years to come. The story is still developing. The evidence may change. We'll continue following it. I'm the Anglosphere Report, connecting the stories shaping the Anglosphere and the world. Should New Zealand join the Ocean of Peace Alliance, or would staying outside better serve its independent foreign policy?